In the summer of 1779, Admiral Luis de Córdova commanded the Spanish squadron that would have invaded England that summer, but the ongoing hesitancy by French Admiral Louis Gouret, scurvy, and a typhus epidemic thwarted those plans. In the early morning of August 9, 1780, Luis de Córdova, General Director of the Spanish Armada, was on the brink of making history with 27 ships and a few frigates in what has remained the greatest logistical strike ever suffered by the Royal Navy. It had all started weeks before, with Spanish spies in London who got hold of reports of the departure of a large convoy. At the time, England needed to reinforce militarily and supply its best units, which were fighting overseas in the American War of Independence and in India. When news about the convoy reached the Count of Floridablanca, he alerted the Spanish Armada. At 73 years of age, Luis de Córdova was in command. His forces, made up of 27 ships, had been joined by a French fleet of 9 ships and a frigate. Admiral Luis de Córdova took advantage of the fact that as a result of the previous year's attack, which had halted trade and stopped the stock exchange, London would no longer allow its fleet to leave the English Channel. Thus, the convoy was left with a minimal guard, only 3 ships. During the first days of that August 1780, the swift Spanish frigates surveyed large areas around the squadron. In the early hours of the morning of the 9th, all their efforts at last proved successful. Shortly after midnight, from the Santísima Trinidad, nicknamed the Escorial of the Seas, Luis de Córdova could observe a distant frigate moving windward to search the area, launching a signal as it fired its cannons. He repeated the signal, and from the Santísima Trinidad, the shots were counted. The navigator ordered the squadron to turn and charted the course to reach a point where, at dawn, they would meet the British convoy. In addition to his mastery of navigation, Luis de Córdova added a detail of great relevance. He ordered a lantern to be placed at the top of the foremast of one of the ships. Confused and believing it was a signal from their own commander, the British headed straight for the cunning trap. Meanwhile, the crew members prepared for what would take place shortly thereafter. It was after 4 o'clock in the morning. With the first sight of dawn, the British ships were seen heading towards the squadron commanded by Luis de Córdova. The English Commodore John Moutray commanded the convoy with his 74-gun ship, the Ramillies. His mission was to provide protection, along with 2 frigates, the Thetis and the Southampton. When the British realized their mistake, it was too late. They retreat in disarray. The Ramillies and the 2 frigates flee, abandoning the convoy to its fate. It was then that Luis de Córdova began to selectively bombard the terrified British to force them to cease. He orders a chase to immediately capture the spoils. The importance of the capture was enormous. Not only had more than 50 ships been seized, but also an exceptional spoil of some 80,000 muskets, 3,000 barrels of gunpowder, a large quantity of provisions and naval equipment destined to keep the British fleets in America and the Indian Oceans operational, which included uniforms and supplies for 12 infantry regiments and £1 million worth of gold. Furthermore, some 3,000 prisoners were taken, of whom approximately 1,400 were infantrymen that had been sent as reinforcements. All of them would later be released. This Spanish victory was the greatest logistical defeat in the United Kingdom's naval history. Thanks to this action, Admiral Luis de Córdova expedited the victory of the 13 colonies, and with it the birth of the United States of America.